Good evening, I'm Antonia Singut. Welcome to Business PNG, your weekly look at business news and updates. Menyama in the highlands of Morbe province is rated among Papua New Guinea's top organic coffee producers. After more than 40 years of coffee growing, the growers still face ongoing challenges of high transport costs, bad roads, and limited government support to agriculture. But the people are a resilient lot. They're finding ways to cut costs and revitalize their ailing businesses.
Over the last 15 years, coffee producers in Menyama made a name for themselves as some of the top producers of organically grown coffee. From humble plots like this, the coffee beans find their way to world markets so far removed from this place.
Coffee garden and 4 bags. Coffee garden big plant also. Big plant coffee or degree leap ya, or degree leap ya, and or degree too much. Na, I'm say, name is a problem na back ya.
Joel Apmamgo has been a coffee farmer since 1999. Like other farmers in this region, he came to understand the value of organically grown coffee through community awareness.
Mi plan sa apply one bla was chemical blong, kilim garage. Nablo sum guru hariap or just like kind and mi plan no apply no cut. Mi play planim tason look how I'm grow and mi plan say scaling low divide two. Mi plan to come into em mi karamabim. I was oversay da. I'm karamabim and mi plan say I was cut him down all branches from him. Na let him dig this sunlight come next him. So, I'm looking for some coffee. I'm come up good through. So, and pure coffee I'm grow.
Joel is one of hundreds of farmers whose main revenue comes from coffee harvests every 6 months. But in a remote place like Menyama, making money and staying in business can be sometimes a daunting challenge. To understand his challenges, it's important to take into account the numerous other contributing factors that have become major impediments to business and development in general.
Papa, mama, mi bla kirim siginati. Mi bla ka people ka den kopi. So now people am the dog. Mi bla look him number. Plus for number you go and up way. Mi bla say ulusim Menyama place. Selling kopi long long one. Plus you know happen.
Ben lo cash crop some coffee lo people cash crop plus sakam lo android. So mi plus sim time or papa car mi plus sim time lo kuncho lab lo sim coffee lo android nagamot because android emi no problem bagara bogata.
Joel's main business center is the old government station of Menyama. Built in the colonial days under the Australian administration, it is closer to the borders of Eastern Highlands and Gulf than it is to Lae. Menyama's strategic location makes it an ideal spot for trade. Every week, coffee from the largely inaccessible areas of the Gulf and Eastern Highlands are brought to Menyama to be transported to Lae.
Before time, lo 90s kamo se mem people saksi time straight. Lo tamplo ikamatap lo asigi dislab mem lo west abu mem plus kam sim time le mem tanole. Mem plus plan di car bagarab lo slab nubla car sa kam cholem sa kam bagarab lo slab. Iglo mani sa west lo dislab lo olayaman sa karim ka kam or sa rausim gen lab. Transferim narab car saksi kamatap. And big plus after mem plus actually lo dislab.
Depreciation cost of running car from Lae to Menyama, it is this incredible, you cannot believe it.
Between 2010 and 2012, Elijah Timothy built a business around the transportation of coffee. He was, by Menyama standards, a wealthy businessman with 15 Land Cruisers and assets worth over 500,000 kina.
All the money you make, bag, tire. All the money you make to the CRC. All the money you make to the all different parts of the car. They eat money like hell. And to the fact that Land Cruiser is not a heavy duty car like a Nissan Petrol. Land Cruiser is a light car.
The bad road conditions drove up his costs so much he had to sell part of his vehicle fleet.
So within the next 2 years, the car is already bad. I'm telling you, if you ask many of these guys who own the car, they will tell you a Land Cruiser don't last more than 2 years or 3 years. So the depreciation value of that car is just very high. You lose everything. If the car costs you, like today, it costs us about 130,000 kina to buy one car. But if you run that car within a year or two, within a year, you are not going to come up to that. You will not come 130,000 kina. If you run to the second year, yes, you will come a little bit closer, and by the time you like making income, the car is already eating you up again.
Over the past 20 years, the deteriorating road conditions have become a major impediment to potentially profitable businesses. For small farmers, it's hit them hard. Every year, more than 10 tons of coffee are transported along this road. It's an important link between Lae and the far-flung border regions of the Eastern Highlands and the Gulf provinces. The people there have to walk for several days before getting to Menyama. Then they make the 8-hour journey on four-wheel drives to Lae. Despite the economic importance of this region, this road, this important infrastructure, has been given very little attention. Much of the blame for the bad roads has been levelled against Menyama MP Benjamin Phillip. But like many members of parliament from rural electorates, mobilisation costs of contractors and the cost of service delivery to remote places like Menyama eat up about 70% of his development budget.
To date, even though kan man work lo tok lo road mila talking suppose me or some little leader me no been working a plan good na me no been giving priority long infrastructure like or some road long bololo igolo Menyama mila talking me straight and this road here by you mean banana accessing.
With increased funding in the 2014 budget, a lot of effort is now being put into rehabilitating the ailing infrastructure.
Time administration I'm weak, makes him blame. That's why me as a leader, me talk, yes, me can kiss him blame. I will be blamed for this, now me accepting.
Now me apply location 100,000. So I'm ready now. Now me will start buying popina.
Smith Dene is one of the many coffee buyers looking for effective ways to manage the high costs. He runs the Kome Cooperative Group, which buys coffee from farmers far from Menyama. He says the key to success is to increase coffee volume so that modest profits can be made.
But through all farm, I got big plan also. Only less location price belong here because all line long here work long play up one time plan over resources belong plan. All this line and more local benefit na this la. But only like him also Kome Cooperative now I must give him export license long delivery coffee long throughout long country na all give him original price trade lo do.
O put in place also Atkina, Nanigina, Tenigin, ha, you look at Menyama go by some magan for me project and by goes along. Market, one emia. Could one emia come long him. Now, look at me like him, Boxalo, Molomben, and me along. I don't know when and me from behind him, Palat. Could be got any use to him. Could be kidding me. Now, Zambla, me blah. One bless something, me blah, lazy long. Palas. One blah, me baby, me send up to Dogo. Me blah, no one album business copy. Copy na pick. Menyama emia. You know, one blah, me by you. You know, one goal. You know, one blah. Copy na pick. That. No, I'm by strong na. Happy plus for me blah.
Kome Cooperative is still in its infancy compared to other cooperatives in the Morbe province. The cooperative faces the challenge of winning back the trust of farmers who lost thousands of kina through failed cooperative movements at the turn of the century.
What happened is that company may go bankrupt because cost just increased and it cannot pay the farmers. The coffee we're building up stock here cannot reach the market. And a coffee rot in the house. So that's the problem. When we came down this place, there was no business. And we had this case situation. This place, just no money.
Long side me play again come up him. Taso also me talk individualism and me stop more yet. Time me play put him on group. Now you set man you pass on sa group na you like make him emo farmer one pla by kirap na to ko problem big pla taso money me kisimikam giving me ya me ligil tumas. This a conflict me stop. Na osem nung buwana o kolim wanamnya nakawasi ya. Nakanasi ya. Moli gat bilip long narapla. Osem na walang sanding oli mikim. Oli sawo sa mo back simbek walang blongo. Na igo straight long account blongo na oli amamas.
The future of Menyama now looks very promising. With increased funding to the districts in the 2014 budget, roads are being fixed for the first time. A contractor is currently graveling road sections and fixing drainage. Within the next 12 months, business confidence is expected to return. Costs will come down and profits will again be made in Menyama.
Don't go away. When we return, we speak to a local artist who has made a name for himself with his works of art. Welcome back. The creative industries, as it is called in some countries, is labelled an industry for a particular reason. In developed countries, this is because of its contributions towards the economy and, more importantly, its potential. The arts, culture, music and film are just some of the activities that come under this industry, but which are still considered second priority in other countries. However, these are the very activities that could one day provide significant and positive economic and social contributions towards the country. In this segment, Leanne chats to one of PNG's contemporary artists, Jeffry Feeger, who has made a name for himself both locally and globally. While some of his works could fetch him between 3,000 to 6,000 kina, Jeffry still feels that PNG has got a long way to go in terms of turning masterpieces into viable sources of income.
The arts have existed for centuries in Papua New Guinea, originating in the very fabrics of our culture. From paintings and carvings to sculpting and designing, Papua New Guineans have a rich history that has always coexisted with this fascinating and expressive subject. Unfortunately, the arts remain undeveloped and haven't as yet entirely progressed into an industry. Most of the country's talented artists operate informally. The arts have a major potential to stimulate economic growth as well as create employment. In the UK, businesses in the arts and culture industry generated an aggregate turnover of £12.4 billion in 2011. I sat down with undeniably one of Papua New Guinea's finest and most reputable artists, Alatau-based artist Jeffry Feeger. Jeffry's art focuses on portrait painting and describes his style as magic realism, reflecting the convergence of traditional and contemporary life. He has exhibited his portraits in PNG, Australia and New Zealand, and performed his live art at the New York Musical Festival in the American city last year. While Feeger considers himself an artist by profession, he admits that part of this profession demands some marketing and some sales skills, as well as maintaining customer relations. A simple painting by the local artist can range between 3,000 and 6,000 kina, while some of his work can be auctioned off at close to 60,000 kina.
First of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your art?
I've always been drawing since I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I got into it in school, and I was encouraged by my parents, my brother especially, my older brother, who also took up visual arts. And it's not until high school that I really found it was something that I really wanted to pursue. In fact, I could see making a career out of it. Back in 2003 when I began pursuing the arts as a professional career. And back then it was really about drawing pencil sketches for 5 kina, 10 kina, selling my work at the craft market at Ella Beach, and sitting down in the hot sun and selling work for 20, 50 kina. Eventually I got into portraiture. I was known for portraits. That was when I painted the Queen's portrait. I think that was while I was still in university. and that got quite a lot of recognition and was taken over to London to sit in the Papua New Guinean High Commission over there, or embassy. That kind of gave me a bit of notoriety and sort of built my name, and I started doing portrait commissions. I wasn't particularly a portrait artist, but it was what people wanted, and I catered for that.
Your portraits have taken you around the world and it's been really successful. Congratulations. How viable has the arts been for you and your family? How has it provided a livelihood?
What I've had to do is look at ways in which I could increase what I'm earning from my work and bring about some consistency. So initially it was about selling one-off paintings for good amounts of money, and then using that money to invest in other things that could bring about more regular income. So what I did was over a period of years, I invested in property and built a house, rented it out. I was earning income from that, and then I was able to continue with my passion. So I think, it's feasible. I mean, if anyone's got a dream, it's feasible. Some dreams are a bit more challenging than others. But if you're very keen and passionate, you could follow through with it. You can always find a way to do it. I'm sure there's always a way to do something like that. And so that's basically what I did. And I'm still looking at ways and means in which I can continue with this regular income.
So the arts in the country is not really as recognized as it is in other countries. How can we gradually move from the stage that we are at right now to a more standardized industry?
Well, I think you have to introduce international standards. You've got to adapt those standards that are being used overseas. When I talk about standards, what I mean specifically is methods in which we market our work and our industry, and the way in which we view it and we classify it. And basic things, I mean, one thing for starters, we've got a craft market, and what we do at the craft market at Ella Beach, which is a monthly thing and provides income for the majority of creative artists in Port Moresby, is that we could take the work off the floor in the hot sun and we could begin to put it on walls or petitions. We can begin to put it under shade, under sheltered areas. We could begin to build the infrastructure for it. I mean, those are all essential things, building blocks to building an industry. So you've got to have the infrastructure. You've got to have people who could facilitate for that art to be sold.
In your opinion, how can the arts contribute to Papua New Guinea's economy?
I think in a very substantial way. I think it could, because the reason is there's a lot of potential, and this is what we're talking about, is intellectual capacity and an intellectual capital and an intellectual industry. We're not talking about minerals and non-sustainable things. We're talking about constantly renewable things, which is human intellect. So these skills, sometimes they're innate. They come naturally to people of certain culture and backgrounds. They would be practicing art as children and growing up with it. And at the same token, we've got to allow them the opportunity to make an income from that creativity by providing and facilitating for that industry by the things that I had mentioned, like infrastructure and people who can help to support the arts. So really, we've got people from all walks of life who could apply themselves in this industry. It's a creative industry. We're talking about people creating something with their hands, using minimal natural resources, really the basic things they could use to turn it into income.
So Papua New Guinea has a lot of talented artists like yourself. The question is, how can they graduate from the informal sector to the formal sector?
A lot of us earn our income from the informal sector. I mean, it's how we've kept, we stay alive. There's less rigid formality in something like the creative arts industry. But there's no, it could easily turn into an industry that pays tax and supports the government if it was looked after, yes. If there were facilities, if there were people interested in turning it into business, and registering things, paying taxes. So, I think we just need those people to turn entrepreneurs, to turn art into something that is an industry. selling artworks. So most of the transactions are all informal, and that works well for the artists. But there are one or two people out there who have started clicking on. They register a design company or business that sells graphic design and also art and fine art, and they're here and there in pockets. And we do have a young fellow by the name of Emmanuel who's running his own shop underneath the Vision City. I believe it's at the car park level. Yep. And he sells a lot of art that's from artists that he knows, and he seems to be doing pretty well. And I think he's one good example of someone who's actually turned it into a business, in the arts, and he's got enough people contributing to make it viable. So I mean, there's a lot of potential there. It's seeing that potential, recognizing that potential, and capitalizing on it. In my case, however, I, as an individual, I mean, that's the way forward for me. Is actually getting to a stage where everything is formalized, that I'm making substantial business decisions where it's involving capital, and to start looking at my artwork as capital on its own. Perhaps something that could be even leased. Like if I have a large painting, I could lease it out to a company, say for 2 or 3 years. I could earn a monthly salary from that, you know. And this is capital that's not, it won't be depreciating, it'll be appreciating. And it's minimal maintenance. I'm not going to be spending time maintaining a painting, like a vehicle perhaps. So it is a wise investment, I think, but you have to think about it and you have to strategize around it.
And that was our interview with local artist Jeffry Feeger. Speaking of art, this month we'll also see Melanesian countries visit PNG for the 5th Melanesian Festival of Arts. And we've reached the end of our show. For more business news, or if you would simply like to view this episode again, visit MTV Online. That's mtv.com.pg/business. Until next week, have a good night. I'm Antonia Singut, and this is Business PNG.